Welcome, everybody. It is week 3 of Women of Fantasy Football. Yes, we are down to our final 2 weeks, and we still have amazing guests. This week, it may be a little company that you've heard of. They go by the worldwide leader of sports. It's our ESPN week. We have not one, but 2 guests who happen to work at ESPN. I am overjoyed with who we have this week. Brooke Pryor, she is the Pittsburgh Steelers beat reporter with ESPN and a familiar face to Women of Fantasy you may have seen last year. ESPN's Stephania Bell is going to be joining us a little bit later. We also have a couple more raffles that we're announcing the winners to. We are giving away a signed Ja'Marr Chase jersey, a signed Deion Sanders jersey, and thankful to all of you, we've raised another $645, which goes into our scholarship fund for GALvanize. I don't even want to get any more into it. Let's get to Brooke. It's fantastic. Stay tuned with Faith and Kelly.
Hello, everybody. And welcome to week 3 of Women of Fantasy Football. Apparently, Kelly is into the giggle juice already. Or water, as she claims. I'm not sure I believe that. Oh, yeah. She said she had to go refill her water, and Jesus did a miracle again.
Thank you, Lord.
Again, welcome to week 3 of Women of Fantasy Football. If this is your first week and you've missed the last 2 and you're usually here for no pun intended, we look a little different. We're not sorry because we're prettier.
True.
We have some lovely people in the chat who are here joining us. Thank you for joining us. Kelly, hi.
Hello. It is 4:03 p.m. I still have an
5 o'clock
hour
somewhere
of work left, but it doesn't really count when you're on a podcast.
No, it doesn't. Nothing counts when you're on a live stream.
Plus, Wednesdays are for waiver wires. This is my new shirt today. Waiver claims.
I'm wearing my DLF shirt.
Not to be confused with DFS. Which we had a discussion about earlier, and I was talking about DFS, and Faith's like, "Well, I wore my DLF shirt." I was like, it's not the
Kelly basically was then like, "That's not DFS," because she was mad that somebody didn't include them in their list of top DFS people, and she's like, "I'm just gonna go eat my feelings." So with that said, Brooke, welcome to the show. We are kind of all over the place. There is nothing formal about us, in case you haven't figured that out.
I love it. That's my kind of podcast. That's my kind of show.
Yes. So for those who are watching, Josh gave a brief little snippet of who you are and what you do. But for those who are watching who don't know who you are, first of all, they need to get out from under that rock they live under. But let them know who you are and what you do.
My name is Brooke Pryor, as it says on my lower third, because I didn't put my Twitter handle in there because I wasn't thinking. I just clicked yes, enter the live stream.
Our handy assistant could take care of that for you.
Oh, well, if there's some behind the scenes magic that can make that happen, by all means, it's at BE Pryor if you would like to follow along. I cover the Steelers for ESPN's NFL Nation. We have a dedicated reporter for every single NFL team, and I cover the Steelers. I'm going on my 4th season, which is crazy. It's the longest I've ever covered one single team outside of like going to college at UNC and covering those teams while I was in college. So, I mean, I guess I like sticking around the Steelers and seeing what they have going on here in Pittsburgh.
That's super awesome. And it's totally like cool.
Totally cool.
I'm like, I don't know where to go. Because like
she's at a loss for adjectives.
Okay, so you went to UNC, Tar Heel over here, in case you don't follow Brooke on any social media. Because I've learned that powder blue is Brooke's like second favorite color, especially if there's anything UNC related. But I think how did you end up becoming the beat reporter for the Steelers? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I fell into sports journalism at UNC. I really didn't plan on joining the student paper. I just always really liked sports, and I was going to sign up for the yearbook, and they were like, hey, we haven't published in 2 years, but you can help on back issues. And I was like, gee, that does not sound like fun for me. So I turned around, and the Daily Tar Heel table was right next to the yearbook table at Fall Fest, where you like sign up for everything. And like, I'm probably still getting emails about Ballroom Dancing Club that I never went to once. Yes. But I was like, I can reinvent myself. Maybe this is actually me. It was not me. And I found that I really like sports writing. I worked at the Daily Tar Heel all 4 years, was eventually the sports editor, and then ended up working locally in Durham and Chapel Hill, covering UNC, went to a couple newspapers in the area, covered NC Central, covered everything from, ACC basketball to random features in the area. And then after the Final Four in 2016, I had connected with some people down in Houston, and they emailed me later. They worked for the Oklahoman, and her name's Jenny Carlson. She's a columnist there. She's amazing. She said, hey, we have an opening for the OU football writer job. Would you be interested? I said, yes, absolutely. I want to kind of see what else is out there. So I moved to Oklahoma. My husband, Teddy, then boyfriend, moved out with me a couple months later. And we lived in Oklahoma for a couple years. And then I got an email from the Kansas City Star. They said, hey, we have an opening to cover the Chiefs and cover Patrick Mahomes, which I had seen the Baker Mayfield Patrick Mahomes shootout game in Lubbock, thought it was amazing, and was like, gosh, like this Mahomes is the future, I think. Like, he's such an electric player. I got to admit, I know that there's a place for defensive football. It is obviously a huge part of the Steelers' identity. I am here for some fast-paced offense. I'm here for the trick throws, for just trick plays. You name it, I'm an offensive person. And so when I thought about the opportunity to cover Patrick Mahomes, I was like, well, I can't pass that up.
Yeah.
So moved to Kansas City, covered the Chiefs for the 2018 season when they lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. That was Mahomes' MVP season. And then got in contact with ESPN. They said they had an opening to cover the Steelers. And I was like, well, if I'm going to give up Patrick Mahomes for anything, I should probably give it up for one of the most stable and winningest franchises in the National Football League. And at that point, Ben Roethlisberger was healthy. Kevin Colbert was not retired. Mike Tomlin still hadn't had a losing season. And that part's still true. But those other two things were quickly not true, because I had been in Pittsburgh all of about 3 weeks when Ben had his elbow injury. And that kind of, just completely blew up what I thought I was getting into. Never mind that they had, gotten rid of, no longer had Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. They'd had some drama, and I thought, okay, great, this is great. It's going to be a drama-free team. It's going to be nice and stable. It is none of those things. It is never any of those things. So now I've got a quarterback competition that I'm following. It's gotten a lot closer than I think any of us expected it would be at this point, with 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks until the regular season. But that's what makes this job fun, is that we still have things to talk about just at the time when you'd think the preseason storylines are running out and, oh my God, can we get to the regular season? The Steelers keep things interesting. And for that, I am very, very grateful.
That's so fun.
That is so cool. I'm just kidding, Faith. So you mentioned Patrick Mahomes and being the future. Do you still feel that way about Patrick Mahomes? Does he hold that special place in your heart still?
I think so, but I don't think the gap from him to the next player is that wide. I mean, a guy like Josh Allen is showing that he can go toe-to-toe with Mahomes and do some of the things, maybe not all the things, but I mean, the arm strength is there. Not everybody, can do these little sideways passes or the behind the back or the no look throws, but more quarterbacks are trying them. And it's kind of like when people used to, take shots and call themselves Kobe. Now they throw passes and they'll say like Mahomes or whatever. Like kids like to pretend to be Mahomes on the playground. So it's only a matter of time before the things that he does become more prevalent in the game and he's not such an anomaly. But it's so fun to see now that the rest of the league is trying to keep up with him. The gap is obviously closed some, and defenses are figuring it out. And he also has to learn that sometimes it's better for him to go back to the basics, because when he tries to force it to Tyreek Hill, which is not an option anymore, he was trying to get too fancy sometimes. He wasn't going back to the basics. That was leading to mistakes, interceptions, turnovers. Teddy upstairs just reminded me that today's Kobe Bryant's birthday, and I just referenced him. So I that's how I'm honoring him today. His 44th birthday, which I saw on Instagram. But yeah, I think that he is probably one of my favorite players to watch, because you never know what he's going to do.
So you just mentioned that Mahomes was getting himself in trouble because he was trying to do all of the fancy stuff. And then, sorry, brief pause. There's a Hootie in the background.
Hootie, come here. Come here. Here he comes.
Yes. Hi, Hootie.
Hi.
Hi.
And Bo is on the ground chewing a bone
down the fort. Yes.
That
Is
Hootie
a poodle mix?
He is. He's a doodle. He currently looks like an overgrown Cocker Spaniel because he got sheared.
Got a summer cut.
Camp. Yeah, this is his second summer cut. If it's up to me, he stays longer and scruffier because I think he's cuter when he's scruffier. But Teddy was in charge of the grooming this time.
Dang it, Teddy!
I know
what happens when we put men in charge.
He was like, he walked in, he said, just shear him down. Just shear him like a sheep. And I cried. I was so sad.
Teddy,
he does not look like the same dog.
My best friends have two doodles, golden doodles. And when they cut them, I'm like, that's sad.
I know.
Because then they look more like poodle, and I was like, that defeats the whole purpose here.
Exactly. I like it when he's scruffy and like he can't see, but I can see him.
Exactly. He knows where he's going at this point.
Exactly.
He see anyway.
He can sniff it out.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
He's giving me the evil eye over the computer. Like, would you shut up? Can you just?
Pay
why can't I see?
Mom. Yeah. What's wrong with it? So you were talking about Patrick Mahomes and like not going back to the basics, but trying to do the fancy stuff. Do you think that his early success in his career, like, kind of brought that on? Oh, well, I was successful, so let's try. Like, I can be cool and do all of this cool kid stuff. Do you think that mental game had an effect on him?
I think so, because they were constantly pushing the limits and the boundaries of what was possible. That's how Andy Reid works. He wanted to try. He has a stack of cards that are Pat plays. Like, he always wanted to do the next cool cutting edge thing. And then I think on some level, Mahomes feels this pressure. He is the face of the league in a lot of ways. He had a lot of early success, so he has to keep upping the ante. He has to keep pushing that bar higher for himself, much in the same way that Simone Biles conquered the gymnastics world at a young age. So now she's doing tricks that only she can do. It was kind of like that. And at some point, you fly too close to the sun, or you have to realize that you're human and there's a limit to what you can do. And maybe you'll get there one day, but it's okay to take a step back and let's do some of the basics things that laid the foundation that got here, that got you where you are. And that's why, honestly, I'm not worried about the Kansas City offense without Tyreek Hill. I've said it all summer. I said it from the minute he got traded. I think that Tyreek Hill was a safety blanket for Mahomes, right? And he could just chuck it up and be like, you know what, Tyreek will get it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, yeah, Tyreek got it, but it also put the offense in a bad position sometimes, could open him up to throwing interceptions. Now I think you get back to more fundamentally sound football. I think he still has so many offensive weapons. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, Sky Moore has been really impressive. He also still has Travis Kelce. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
So I think that this offense is going to be just fine. Last night I did my first fantasy draft of the season, went in basically blind, did not do much advanced research, which I was just like, yeah, I have a general knowledge. I'll be fine.
I feel like there's somebody that could have helped you, though.
He did help me. Teddy did help me, but I want you to know that he helped me.
Oh gosh.
In knowing how I like to draft, which is where I draft guys that I know.
Yes.
Or have some kind of like loose relationship to, like maybe I covered you for one game in college, or
that's fantastic.
You know, it is a sometimes it works and sometimes it means that I have Gio Bernard on my bench all season. I did not draft Gio this year. But he did when I was like trying to pick between players, like at one point I drafted Lamar Jackson and I forget who else was on the board and what round I drafted him in. But I was like, okay, yeah, I feel good about that pick. And he goes, yeah, I wouldn't have made it. And I was like, you just told me to make that pick. And he goes, yeah, because I know that you covered Lamar, you know, in the Heisman ceremony in 2017 or 2016. And so therefore, you know, you're going to like him, which is true. I guess it was the 2016 season that I covered Lamar in the Heisman ceremony. It was when Baker was also a finalist. And I have a folder from that ceremony that like they passed out all of Lamar's like Heisman credentials in. And I saved that folder. It's a very nice, high quality folder. And that was the folder that I put our marriage license in after we went to the courthouse before our wedding. So there's a picture on my Instagram of us taking a selfie with the Lamar Jackson Heisman folder.
That's amazing.
With our marriage certificate in it. And therefore, I had to draft him on my fantasy team.
I mean, it's only fair.
That reasoning
He's
good
enough to hold your marriage license. He's good enough
to carry my fantasy team. Thank you.
Exactly. I got you.
That's what I said.
I do have Steelers questions. So I'm going to ask, will Trubisky start for the Steelers, and has he become besties with Chase Claypool yet? That's my own selfish need for my fantasy teams.
So I think this quarterback race is getting a lot closer than it was a month ago, right? I still think that Trubisky at least starts week 1, but I would not count on him being the starter all season. It's funny. I was reading back today about what happened when Trubisky got drafted to the Bears, and they declared from the very beginning, there's not going to be a quarterback competition. Mike Glennon is our guy. And by, I think it was October 9th, John Fox held a press conference and was like, oh, just kidding. It's actually going to be Mitch Trubisky. After Glennon did not have a great start, threw a lot of interceptions, and the offense was just terrible. I don't think this offense is going to be that offense. I don't think Trubisky is going to be Mike Glennon bad. Maybe that's also my commentary on a UNC quarterback versus an NC State quarterback. I'm biased. I get it. But I don't think that Trubisky's floor is that low. But I do think that his leash gets significantly shorter with how well Kenny Pickett has played, because Pickett is the future here, right? I mean, they spent a first-round pick on him. They watched him practice at Pitt for 5 years. They believe that this guy is the ultimate successor to Ben Roethlisberger and that Trubisky is a bridge guy. This is an opportunity for Trubisky to restart his career after the year that he spent in Buffalo behind Josh Allen. But I think that his timeline, his opportunity to prove himself gets a lot shorter if if Kenny Pickett is ready for the NFL now. He's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie, but in just the small sample size that we've seen in preseason games, the poise that he has, the presence he has in the huddle, Chase Claypool said today that he's throwing more catchable balls, that he's just putting a better touch on these things. So I think that Kenny Pickett will start. I don't know at what point, but I think they went into the season thinking, all right, Mitch Trubisky is our quarterback until further notice. Maybe
Right.
Kenny will play at the end of the season when it doesn't matter. And now Kenny Pickett is coming on really strong. And they're like, okay, well, that further notice may be a lot shorter than we thought. But the good news is that Claypool is tight with both Trubisky and Pickett. I actually talked with Brandon Marshall when he was up at Steelers camp recently. And he was talking about the things that he was helping Chase Claypool through, how to watch film, how to identify NFL defenses, also sit down and talk with your quarterback, build that rapport with him. And that was a huge emphasis. That's something that Chase has done. He's followed through on, worked out with him in the offseason. He's practiced with both Pickett and Trubisky. I believe he had a nice catch, I believe, from both in the last preseason game, but his catch from Pickett got wiped away because of a penalty. But I think he's going to have a really productive year. I'm trying to think. Did I draft Claypool? I think I
have so
did.
many shares of Claypool. Like, people are leaving him really late, so it makes it a very tempting draft, but not knowing who's going to be quarterback makes it so scary. But the thing that you got me thinking about with Pickett and Trubisky is it could be a similar situation that the Ravens had when Joe Flacco was leaving and Lamar was coming on, and they would, kind of play quarterback by committee. I mean, there's that possibility also, although Trubisky is not Flacco quality, but it could still be maybe something like that. Who knows?
It's funny because when I covered Trubisky at UNC, they did that and it did not go well. I was refreshing my memory today about that, and I believe it was the 2016 season, it was the 2015 season, I'm sorry, where Marquise Williams was the starter, but Larry Fedora committed to playing Mitch Trubisky every third series. And it was the dumbest thing I have ever heard a coach decide to do with his quarterbacks, because he reasoned it as being like, okay, well, now Mitch isn't going to be waiting for Queese to mess up because he knows he's going to go in for every third series. And it's okay if that series ends in a punt because this is just the way it's scheduled. So it doesn't matter if, he's playing, if he's the hot hand or not, he's still going to come out. And it just disrupted both quarterbacks' rhythm. And they stopped that midway through the year once Queese came out and took control, I believe it was during a Georgia Tech game. So that was a long time ago, obviously almost 10 years ago, which is crazy. And it makes me feel very old. But I don't think that the Steelers will do a quarterback by committee if they can help it. Because when you have two quarterbacks, you have none. But I would also say the thing why I think Claypool's still on the board late is because the Steelers receivers, we haven't had an opportunity to see in a full-length regular season game who the favorite's going to be, right? And they have a stacked wide receiver room, and it was kind of Deontay Johnson was a favorite of Ben Roethlisberger. Like he was somebody that Ben went to all the time, and he got paid like that. So he's going to be really involved. Claypool in the slot will be important, but then you've also got George Pickens. What do you do with him? Najee Harris is going to be involved in the pass game. Gunnar Olszewski has been involved. I mean, they have so many different guys that it's hard to say who's going to get hot, and it may end up the ball spread out too much and nobody is really bringing any points. Like, I did pick up in the last round, I did draft George Pickens because, once again, I know him, and that's
first of all, as a UGA fan, like, you're speaking my language. That's it.
He's so I'm very excited by his potential. And when I saw that, I mean, of course, he was still going to be on the board in the last round. Like, I felt like I had to, and I was like, I'll take a flyer on him. Like, if he pans out like I think he will, I feel good about having him on there. But yeah, I wonder how evenly spread out this wide receiver core is going to be.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, it is helpful.
And cool.
It's way cool. Okay. It's totally rad.
Totally.
And so honestly, that's a lot of football. That's usually more football than we talk about. And so now I need to talk about important things, Brooke. And that's an establishment we enjoy called Bojangles.
I wish that my dog's actually fetched because I have a Bojangles biscuit pillow.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not going to get up from the couch because that will be a production because I'm sitting on like a chaise lounge thing and it is
never
a whole
easy
thing.
to get up from there. No.
But I will pivot my camera and you can see the plaid thing. Yeah, Bo's like real. Oh, actually Teddy's going to come down and assist, I think.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Teddy. Your fabulous assistant.
Here's my fabulous assistant.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So this is, the wrapping of the Bojangles biscuit is this, and then you flip it around, and it's a biscuit pillow.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And my friend sent it to me last year when I was going through some stuff, and I couldn't leave the house for a while, and they were like, "Here, you probably need a biscuit pillow."
Oh my gosh,
and so,
I love it.
Bo lays on it most of the time. Bo, who is named after Bo.
Shut up.
Yes. Yeah, he's a Bo. He's not a Beau.
Yeah.
So that was very purposeful.
So I live in Florida. We don't have any Bojangles. My parents live in North Georgia. They do. So I usually only get Bojangles when I'm up there at Christmas and Thanksgiving, or if I happen to be on my way to Canton and flying through Charlotte. And so I was flying through Charlotte recently on my way to Canton, there and back. And so I got to eat Bojangles twice within like the same weekend, breakfast and then dinner, or dinner and then breakfast. So my question to you is, what is your go-to Bo order?
Oh my gosh. Okay. There's some variables here.
Okay.
Because it depends.
I feel that.
It depends, first of all, on if I've had it recently.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I haven't had it recently, I'm doing a Cajun filet biscuit with egg and cheese and Bo rounds. No question, I have to get the Cajun filet with egg and cheese out of the way first because it's going to be great.
I haven't had it with the egg and cheese. I'll need to try that next time because I usually just do the Cajun filet biscuit.
No, add the egg and cheese. You want the whole chicken on there. Literally every single part. You want
chicken on a sandwich. I'm here for it.
Exactly. And oh my God, the biscuits.
The biscuits.
So that's my haven't had it in a while.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm on, like, because I only get it when I go home to visit my parents. They're in North Carolina. So and my parents are not big fast food people either. So it's literally just like on the drive down, on the drive back.
Yeah.
And so if I have had it, then I do the Supremes with fries and honey mustard and a biscuit. The 4-piece Supremes meal.
Interesting.
They
I usually stick to sandwiches.
Okay. But see, I like the honey mustard and I want a dip.
Oh, I'm a dipper too. But for some reason, because I don't get it all that often, so sandwiches are just easier. But it's always the Cajun filet. Elixirs, I was talking about Canton, Georgia, but fun fact, my parents live in the town just north of Canton, Georgia. I was talking about Canton, Ohio. My parents live just north of Canton, Georgia. Anyway.
Oh, you got a lot of Cantons in your life.
I know. So many. One's cooler than the other, I can verify.
It's Canton, Georgia, isn't it?
Sure.
And there is a Canton, North Carolina. I am familiar with that one.
So it has to be Canton, Georgia, because if Ryan, our friend and co-host of No Pun Intended, found out that I enjoyed Canton, Ohio, he would disown me as a friend. Because so Ryan used to grow up in the neighboring town of Canton, and his high school and Canton were like rivals. And so when we were there for the Fantasy Expo, he made a joke. He's like, "I'm not showering because I refuse to let Canton water touch my body."
That's one reason. That's one excuse to not shower. I'm here for it.
So tell me your feelings about Bo-Berry biscuits.
Oh, I like Bo-Berry biscuits. I mean, how can you not?
How can my mother doesn't like them. I'm like, First of all, my mother doesn't like blueberries, but that is no excuse.
Oh, well, that could be it. But it's like a blueberry cinnamon roll made out of biscuits.
And it's covered in like icing. I ordered
I just need to say I'm just nodding and smiling, and at this point I'm tweeting because I'm like, what?
What is your go-to regional fast food place?
Josh is just sitting back listening to this.
Regional. Well, I don't think there's anything like super special chain events that come from Phoenix, but we do have In-N-Out, and people think that's really cool when they come here.
I've never been to an In-N-Out.
I feel like the way you said that, you don't think it's cool.
She's like, other people like it.
My daughter works there, so it feels like it's burnout.
Oh, I could feel that.
Does she get like a food discount?
She does, and she actually is so sick of burgers now in her life, which is probably a good thing.
Okay, I can understand that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the closest that people come here for. But what I love about Phoenix is the local food scene here and being able just to go to like little taco trucks or, this hidden place or this coffee shop. And that's what I love about Phoenix. But I don't know Bojangles, but I feel like I need to know what a bow round is. Is that what
it's a little hash brown? Yeah, it's like a little bite-sized hash brown. Oh my gosh.
Have you ever eaten, this is going to sound weird, have you ever eaten the hash brown rounds at like Chick-fil-A or Burger King?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know how small those are?
Yeah.
Bow rounds are slightly bigger. So they're smaller than McDonald's, but bigger than Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
Okay. I'm on board with this.
I'm trying to think of like a coin size that corresponds, and I got nothing.
Like a 50-cent piece.
Yeah, actually, that's perfect.
I'm already
just
looking
rolled a bunch of coins. We had no 50-cent pieces.
I was wondering where you were going when you said we rolled.
Kentucky.
Just coins.
Never know with Teddy.
Oh my gosh.
Just coins.
All right. Well, I know where Versailles. It's not Versailles, by the way.
It is
Kentucky.
Versailles.
It's Versailles, and I know this.
They're not French.
My sister's a horse racing fanatic. Next time in Versailles, I'm going to Bojangles because there apparently is one there.
I believe it. Honestly, I'm just disappointed I have yet to be sponsored by them because it is
seriously
a part of my personality, and I
have tried as well.
The funny thing is, I had not had it until I went to college because again, my family not big on fast food. We unfortunately were a Subway family, and so we drove from North Carolina to Vermont every summer. That's where my grandparents lived. And we only stopped at Subway. And I, probably the same way that your daughter has an aversion to burgers, I have an aversion to sandwiches and subs because I was forced to eat so many. And then if my little sister put up enough of a fight, we went to Taco Bell for her. But I wanted to be the agreeable daughter. And so I was like, no, I'm fine with Subway because I was a kiss up. And I was like, no, I can eat that. And so I never got to have Taco Bell because I also thought it was too spicy. So I'm making up for lost time on that now.
With the Cajun filet biscuits?
Yes, precisely. But no, I will not. I can't go to Subway. And when I covered the Chiefs, fun fact. So Arrowhead is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's like 15 minutes outside of downtown KC, which isn't bad. But the reason that the tailgate culture is so strong at Arrowhead is because there are no bars or anything within walking distance. Like you literally only have the parking lot and the Royal Stadium. The closest place to eat when you're there all day for interviews is a gas station Subway across the street. And there are days when you only have like 20 minutes, and I would just be like, all right, we're going back to the gas station Subway. Like I had a Subway rewards card and everything. And so that combined with the road trips, now if I need a sub, I go to Jimmy John's.
Yes.
Sorry for the slander, Subway. You did nothing wrong. It's me, not you.
It's my parents, not you.
Exactly.
So just for, because apparently our unofficial theme this year seems to be advice for those like just getting started and what's like kind of something that you would want to tell yourself. So what were some of your biggest hurdles when you were just getting started? And if you could go back and tell yourself one thing that would keep you focused or motivated or whatever about where you are, what would it be?
It's a good question. Thinking about the hurdles that I felt like I faced early on, like I will be the first to admit that I am not an X's and O's person. I never have been. It reminds me a lot of math. I am definitely not a math person. It like, that's not me. I can't do it. And when I first started, like I hear X's and O's and I hear technical things and my brain just like freezes. Like I can't do this. And it, like when I started covering football, I literally bought a Football for Dummies book. When I used to help out on our hockey coverage, covering the Canes, I bought a book that was like how to watch hockey without following the puck. Even now, like I don't feel confident in my ability to diagnose a defense, to tell you exactly what the offense is doing, to tell you, you know, why they ran this route, that kind of thing. That's just not my strength. But if I could tell myself one thing back when I got started and I recognized that kind of shortcoming or blind spot in how I approach sports coverage, it would be, you don't need to know the X's and O's in and out. Like you need to understand the basics. Like you need to know that there are 11 guys on the field at a time and things like that. You know, you need to at least understand the framework of it, why things are happening, even if you can't explain the how it's happening. But okay, you know, they're on offense, they want to run the ball. Like if you can at least get the basics down. In my job specifically, which is probably why I'm bad at fantasy football, or I approach it from a non-traditional angle, but I care about the people behind the player. Like I want to give you a reason why you should root for a person, or why you should know, wow, they were really bad today. Here's what went on that led to this performance. You know, like last year, Presley Harvin had a stretch of really rough games, rookie punter for the Steelers. And he had a really strong leg, but like, man, he just had some games where he really stunk it up and he got booed at Heinz Field. Come to find out, I believe it was his grandfather that died right around then. And grandfather, grandmother, family member, or maybe dad. I feel horrible that I can't remember this, but he had like a couple different family members were dealing with, you know, really horrible terminal illnesses, and they passed away. And he's a rookie. He's not at home. He's struggling with that stuff. It's affecting how he's playing like that. Like, that's what I care about. I want to know the why of the person, not necessarily the how and why of the X's and O's. And so I would just tell myself, it's okay. You can trust your instincts on the storytelling. That will help you out more in the long run than understanding why this receiver went in motion. Like that's the stuff that matters. And that stuff adds great context to stories. It can inform why something is newsworthy. But at the end of it, like, people want to read about people. And there are definitely people that want to read about the X's and O's, that want to read about that want to, you know, read film stuff like that. But we don't all have to be good at the same thing.
No.
That's what's great about this industry, is like there's a niche for everybody. And no two people are going to write a story the same way or watch film the same way. And there are plenty of people that don't like me, but they might like more of stuff that Teddy does. And that's fine. And then they can read both of our stuff, and together they'll have a complete coverage. So that's just, I think, one of the biggest things that I would go back and like try to remind myself when I was just getting started, and remind myself now, because imposter syndrome is real.
Yeah, it's first of all, I love what you said about you want to know the person behind the player, and that was our whole point of starting Women of Fantasy Football, is we wanted to get to know the women behind the analyst, Because sure, anybody can watch, like you said, anybody can watch film, anybody can like watch highlights and talk numbers and X's and O's, but not many people will stop to get to know the why behind the what. The why is this guy having a rough week this week, or why did he have to leave early? And so a lot of times people look at women as, we either can't do it because we're too emotional, or if we don't talk X's and O's, well, it's because we're just not smart enough. And that's not the case. And Kendall and Kayla talked about imposter syndrome last week, and it was fantastic. And like you said, there's a place for everybody because we don't all have to do the same thing. And if we're all doing the same thing, then something's getting missed. Something important is being left out of the conversation.
Yep.
And somebody's going to come in and scoop it up and go, that's amazing. How come nobody's talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are struggling to know their place in the content world, figure out what that is. Find out what's being lost or what's just being not covered enough and cover it.
But it also takes bravery to do that, Brooke, because kind of going against the grain, it almost, I don't even know if that's the right thing, but doing something that everyone else maybe isn't doing is a lonely place. I've experienced that too in DFS. And what you said, Faith, was part of my DFS panel. I'm known for looking into the players' week. Like, what have they done this week? Did they get married? Did they have a baby? Did they break up with their girlfriend? You know, like all of these things, because believe it or not, that plays a role in their performance, no matter how hard they try. And it has been a good strategy for me. So I love that you write about those things about the player and not just about the X's and O's, because as you said, your content and Teddy's content come together and there's a winning coverage all around. And I wish more people would pay attention to that. So I'm so glad that you called that out.
And also, as a fellow hater of numbers, I just want you to know that I hear you. I hate math. It's the worst thing in the world. That's why I'm an editor. I don't have to deal with stats and numbers and all of that stuff. But also, for the longest time, I've suspected that I would like you better than Teddy, and now I just know.
Yes. Another one, Team Brooke.
Yes.
We're going to get t-shirts or something.
Yes. With the Bojangles font.
Done. Sold.
Boom. It's like yellow and white plaid background. Oh,
I think this is a huge marketing opportunity.
It really is. Hashtag Team Brooke, and the bee is like the Bojangles bee with the stars and everything. Let's go. Yes, exactly.
It's right here. It's ready.
Exactly.
You can start
Brooke,
tracing it.
Yes.
They won't
Brooke,
mind at all.
I'm sure. Hey, we're just pointing people to them. They'll make more money.
Thank you.
It's a solid business proposition. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us. I know you've had a long day. Thank you for sticking it out with us. Before we let you go, once again, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can watch you, where they can find all of your interviews and lack of numbers, because people need to know sports, and sometimes we just don't want numbers anywhere near it because they're gross.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at BE Pryor. I will post some of my clips there from interviews. You can also find all my stories on ESPN.com under the NFL page. Go to Steelers under teams, and it is all right there. And then if you're watching TV, I will be on ESPN from time to time. Not every day will be as chaotic as today, we hope. It's fine if it is. But I'm not usually on 24/7, and today it kind of felt like it. But yeah, those are the main places that you can find me.
That is fantastic. Kelly, do you have any final words for the fabulous Brooke Pryor?
I just followed Brooke because I didn't know I wasn't following her. So I'm following Brooke now, which is really important for our budding relationship and my newfound love of Bojangles.
Yes.
Got another one.
And I will not follow Teddy because I don't want to be swayed.
You can follow him too. We tweet about each other, so you'll get the
He's
full
really-
picture.
Okay.
I got to meet Teddy at the
Okay.
expo last year.
I'll follow Teddy then.
He's a solid dude.
Yeah,
This
I
was
can't.
great.
I can't
No.
complain.
Well, that
I really love this.
Brooke, thank you so much. Enjoy your evening. Relax. Go have some water that Jesus will magically turn into wine like Kelly. I mean, it's a
I'm
thing.
going to do that. I'm hitting the
Oh,
seltzer
shoot,
right
you
now.
guys.
But
I was already following Teddy and he's following me. Sorry, Teddy.
Okay, let's be to be
BFFs
fair. I followed
forever?
Teddy first though too, simply because Teddy was more prominent in the fantasy football space. So I learned about
Okay.
Brooke from Teddy. So in a roundabout way, I guess I wouldn't have known about Brooke without Teddy. So I guess
True.
we have him to thank for that.
we can thank him for that.
Okay.
We can give him a
Thanks,
little
Teddy.
credit.
And thank you for being the fabulous assistant and getting the biscuit pill. I couldn't remember the word for a second.
He did it all for the biscuit. He risked
He
it.
risked it for the biscuit.
He did.
Brooke, thank you so much again and have a great night.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Whew. Okay, so I have to rest my cheeks before.
Oh, you can
Okay.
see my closet now when the thing's not there. Okay.
It's a beautiful closet. Okay, so continuing with ESPN week, we go from Pittsburgh. Wow. I looked at Josh and he's wearing an Eagles hat, and so I blame him for that. I blame him for everything though, so let's be real. We go from Pittsburgh northeast to Connecticut and Miss Stephania Bell.
Hello, ladies.
Hello, Stephania. How are you?
I'm good. I'm still drinking coffee, which is not a good sign at this hour, but that's what happens this time of year. So
I can't even imagine. I mean, I kind of can because I work in elections and we had an election yesterday, but that was only like 3 days worth of exhaustion, whereas you are living in it 24/7.
Yeah, it's hard to complain.
So-
when it's football related exhaustion. So
That's true.
no one wants to hear you complain about like, oh, I have so much football and fantasy football to prepare for.
No one wants to hear you complain about like football
I
and
do.
fantasy football when they look at you and go, okay, but she works for ESPN.
Yeah.
I want
It's
to hear it all.
yeah, I'm pretty.
Oh, I'm here for it. I get it. I
pretty-
totally
Pretty
understand.
lucky. My brother likes to remind me I'm not digging ditches. I'm not building buildings, and so no, I have a very enjoyable job.
Your brother
can
sounds
say?
a little salty, to be
Oh,
honest.
he's very salty.
Yes.
He's always salty, especially because he works in the world of building. And so he likes to remind me that I have it easy and I get to watch sports for a living. So
Hey,
He's not
but
wrong.
there's a lot of
He's not
information
wrong.
that happens.
yeah.
It's not a physical exhaustion, but it's a mental exhaustion.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's I think that's what people don't realize is as much fun as everything is. It's kind of that feeling that you always are fearful that you're missing something. It's like having FOMO all the time, only for your work.
So, in case any of you missed it, there was a big announcement made about you and ESPN today. You're not going anywhere for a while.
Yes, I'm still gainfully employed. That is good.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So my question is since you started with ESPN, has ESPN always been like the place, or even before you started with ESPN, was that like the goal and the dream, or was there anywhere else that you ever thought about ever being, or that you might be?
When I started, I was just trying to generate interest in this injury analysis concept. So I was basically looking at who's interested. I would have gone anywhere that would have let me get it off the ground. And we talked last year about sort of what the path was, and I was lucky enough to be working for RotoWire, and they elevated what I did quite a bit just by having the magazines and then starting with Sirius XM radio. But I definitely have my eye on TV, and a lot of that came from just the watching sports and looking at commentary around injuries. And so I actually thought that was the pathway in television. I really didn't know. I don't think I had any appreciation for how big fantasy would get. So when I came to ESPN, it was writing. It was really about writing and blogging. We had a blog at the time. I mean, all of the on the .com stuff at ESPN was relatively new. So in terms of how we structured the fantasy content, it was very different from what you see now.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have the NFL Nation team like you just had Brooke on. So we didn't have someone at every spot. We had some national writers, and then they developed the basically division writers. So people would cover like the NFC East, but they weren't like somebody assigned to every team. And so I was gathering injury information and reporting it a lot because it's not like now. The beat writers have it covered. They're there every day. They've got their ears to the ground. So all the news of like the daily stuff, what players are doing, what the updates are from when the coaches speak to the media, they get all that. So the job has evolved and changed from when I came in, but I was just looking at who was going to let me have a platform to talk about injuries and what they meant. And I would have gone anywhere. Once I got to ESPN and sort of couldn't believe that I had landed there. I mean, still was really overwhelmed, I think, the whole first year. And I came in on a temporary contract. I think it was 6 months. And it worked out. Then they kind of extended it for me to work with them on the NFL draft. And then I came on full time after that, and I haven't left. So, I just look at the evolution of what I've done since I got here, and why would I want to go anywhere else? I can do everything. I can do every time I have the contract that by the next one, I've done something different.
That's awesome.
A fact that I have the growth potential through ESPN because of everything that we offer. That's always been attractive to me because I'm somebody who likes to do a lot of different things.
I can relate.
Awesome.
I can relate.
I always tell people I get bored easily, and that's probably why, PT was really good for me because no two things were ever the same, and that's why I get frustrated when people talk about, like, an ACL, like they're all alike. And, if you treat patients that they really aren't. There are nuances and differences for every single person, not only depending on what they had happen or what surgery they had, who did it, but just all their particular unique factors of their history and their personality and what their sport, all that stuff. It's all unique. So you felt like you never got bored in the clinic because every day was new. Every day was different. You were never doing the same thing twice. And that I feel like in my current job, I get to say the same thing about it,
That's totally cool.
That's your word of the night.
Totally.
Your phrase
cool?
of the night is that's totally cool. Stephania, that is totally cool.
You just said it's my phrase, not yours.
I know it's yours. You can have it. Believe me, it's fine. Stephania, I have not had the pleasure of chatting with you. Faith is like your BFF in my mind, at least. So I would really like to know, even though I've seen past episodes and things, could you tell those people who may be new to Women of Fantasy Football, how did you fall in to this in general, though? Like, you're like thinking about just a new niche. Did you decide I'm going to write about these injuries and that's going to be my thing? Because I want to write about like cotton candy and corn dogs at football games, but I don't think that can be a thing. So I want to know how you did it.
The first
Brooke
thing
just said it can be a thing.
Yeah, the first thing
nobody else is covering
to
it.
Believe that what you have is a thing, and I believe that about injuries. So I felt like I was talking about them all the time, all day long. Right? I spend all day. Either and a lot of it was educational because you do that with your patients all the time. You're explaining things. They want to understand the injuries. Why did this happen the way that it did? Are they going to be able to get back? Like, you're answering questions constantly. And I also was teaching in a physical therapy program and then also in a post-professional fellowship program where people who are already PTs but wanted to do advanced training, like in the areas of orthopedics and sports and manual therapy. And so a lot of my job was educational, and I always really liked that. But because I had to explain things so many times, I felt like that became something I could do fairly well. And then I was a huge sports consumer. And in watching sports, I felt like there wasn't anyone to do that. So it would naturally come up in broadcast. People would be asking questions about, they'd say, well, that guy, that looked bad. What are we, I mean, they were much more, what's the word? It was like freewheeling then and talking about, now I think people are conditioned to not go on and on too much about injuries when they know they don't really have the information or know what's going on. But back then they would just say things. And I thought, oh, they could really use somebody there. So between that and then people asking me questions in my fantasy football league, I felt like there's an avenue to talk about injuries and return to play. And I felt like writing was the primary. That was always the first thing that I did. So when you ask about like what I wanted to do, I thought I could write a column that would fit, now that you were seeing people blogging and writing columns online, that was my goal, was to write a column where I would explain the injuries and the players, et cetera. And that's really where I started. And the evolution was really just a function of where I was. RotoWire got the radio platform. So we started talking about it. And that's how that was my first dip into doing something on air.
That is so cool. And I'm not just saying that because TrophySmack is the sponsor of RotoWire. Shameless plug. Boop. No, my daughter is studying to be a physical therapist. She just moved to Northern Arizona University for her 5-year program. And so I want to show her.
Congratulations to her.
Thank you. I want to show her this little segment because she wants to be this physical therapist and she wants to help people. I said, it's such a broad space. You could do so much these days. So I can't wait to show her this.
I think that's the thing. In PT, I have seen so much change. For example, now there are other people who are specifically interested in getting into like the broadcast space. I've seen some PTs start to do it just because they saw a PT who was doing it. I mean, it's that we talk about like, see it, be it all the time. And I think people were like, how did you know? And I said, well, I didn't really, it didn't exist. It just sort of felt like there was a need and I was trying to fill it. That was how I came about it. But when esports was something that we were, kind of dipping our toe in that pool at ESPN, I got asked what I knew about gaming injuries. I was like, well, it's not like I knew that much about gaming, but coming from Northern California and treating a lot of kids and adolescent athletes in my population, but I also got kids who were pretty sophisticated gamers just because the area I was and the technology and all that. So there was a condition called gamer's thumb that was not something that nationally people didn't call it that, but we were seeing it. So at ESPN, I was like, well, I don't, I just need to learn what the demands are of what they do and understand the injury, and then I can figure this out. So anyway, I wrote an article about somebody who had to, basically leave gaming and esports because of the injuries. And it spawned a conversation, and I saw some other people starting to kind of dive into this space. And now I've seen some physical therapists. There are actually 2 who are really good. And they have written, they do TikTok videos but they specialize in physical therapy in esports and gaming. And that did not exist. I mean, that didn't exist at all because gaming wasn't really when I got out of school. But it just goes to show you how there are so many niches that open up, what professionally. I think I always tell people, you take what you're passionate about, something you're really interested in, and stick with it. And you probably can create the path that you want, because It's not like PT fits into little boxes anymore.
No, you're so right. I mean, that applies to myself. That applies to Faith. I think most of the creative people I know have, crafted out their own niche, and that's wonderful.
Mhm.
I was so distracted by the PT conversation and so proud of my daughter. I keep meaning to get back to the chat because Scott is in the chat, and he is somebody that shows up for a lot of our shows. In not just this one, but when we're on other pods too. So, hey, Scott, he wants to know, Stephania, about Darren Waller's injury. What do you think it means for him?
Well, I haven't been too concerned about it because I don't think it's a big deal. I think what's the injuries that are the main things for me right now are the guys coming off the major off-season injuries because like with Waller is just an example of a handful of athletes, I think, who right now are dealing with something that's relatively minor, but the clubs don't want them to become major and into the season. So unfortunately, it makes it very hard to judge how significant it is when we're at a distance because they're holding players back, maybe more than they would in the season. They just don't want them to get any worse, than, especially these soft tissue injuries. Which is what we understand that Darren Waller is dealing with. So I think I'm not overly alarmed. The only ones that have me alarmed, you kind of learn the nuance of how the coaches respond to certain injuries and how fearful you get. And so I'm not really concerned about Darren Waller yet. You might ask me right at the beginning of the season, but I don't think it's major. I think he's in the group that is being, what's the word? Proactively protected.
You're concerned about Gus Edwards because that would be.
Well, Gus Edwards, I think that was, I don't think he was always behind even his teammate, J.K. Dobbins. And so they both, to me, were a little risky coming into the year because they were both struggling a year out from their ACL, and Gus was several weeks behind J.K. Dobbins. But, there was a limitation on their activity from the beginning, and Gus wasn't doing anything at all. So you kind of knew he was going to stay on the PUP list to start the season. And I think they expect him to come back during the year. But, again, it's really tough for the position that they play. You can get away with it a little bit more with as a wide receiver. Maybe as a tight end, kind of depends on the tight end and their particular style of play and what they're being asked to do. But for a running back and the explosiveness and the constant shifting of direction. So two things. Even if you're a downhill runner, then you have to be somebody who drives with your legs and has a lot of power. And that's just hard to get back in that, initially. So when you look at a player like, let's say Gus Edwards comes back 6 weeks in or 7 or 8 weeks in, but what is he relative to his pre-injury status when he first comes back? He's probably not, they just don't start where they left off. There's an acclimation to the sport, and I'd be nervous for fantasy purposes. I don't think I would really go there. And I just think the goal is really for him is to be back to himself eventually and by next year.
Right.
Whatever they get out of him this year is a bonus. I think they're hoping for a little bit more out of J.K. Dobbins, but still, I would say arguably it's a rare situation where somebody comes back and looks exactly like their pre-injury self. And I can probably count the guys on one hand who did it. And some perform pretty close to their stats, relatively speaking, but they don't have the same look. They're not running quite the same. They're not as fast as they once were. And that takes some acclimation to get back to that.
That is not totally cool.
But honest. It's honest.
It's true.
I got lost in in injury talk. Some people
That's okay.
like, and what I mean when I say that is like watching Stephania talk about injuries is like watching you talk about DFS. It's things that you know and you're good at, and things that you like have a passion for. And so sometimes when I watch people talk about their passions, I just get lost in how excited they are about it. It's like Josh and Spider-Man. Yes, I just threw him under that bus. It's fantastic. So, Stephania, in our 3 years of Women of Fantasy Football, we only have 3 repeaters. Fabulous Kate and Michelle, you, and then the ever darling Liz Loza. And now 2 of those 3 are now not only Women of Fantasy Football, but they're Women of Fantasy Football at ESPN. Say that 5 times fast. So, first of all, we love it. We love when women get these kinds of opportunities. We love it even more when women we have previous relationships with get these kinds of opportunities, because it's that personal connection that, like Brooke was talking about it earlier. Like, I feel like I have a personal connection with both of you. And so to see Liz get this opportunity, I was like, that's my girl. So what was your initial reaction when you heard that ESPN was adding another badass woman to the fantasy team?
Oh, it's great. I mean, look, I've known Liz for years, even though we haven't known each other that well. We've been on panels together, like industry panels. I've seen her at all the different spots around the country when the FSTA, now FSGA, gets together. And I've certainly watched her trajectory at Yahoo and seen what she's done and hosting her program with Austin Eckler. So it's funny because I don't think I was shocked at all. Like, I'm not in the decision room, clearly, right? So I find out, when everybody finds out. But it was no surprise to me because she's such a natural fit and she's very versatile. So I think she'll add a lot beyond, just the fantasy content. And she'll have I know that they have plans for her with Daily Wager and stuff too. So I think it's nice to have another, it's funny because I love my male colleagues. So this is nothing to do with, I'm not of the opinion necessarily like we have to get a woman in here just to have another woman on the staff. What I would say is I love having a really talented, smart woman because the credibility factor just goes up that much more. And that's
100%.
That maybe is reflective of sort of, and again, don't anybody read into this. I'm not saying men aren't are nothing like that. But I'm just saying no one at ESPN is going out to seek out a female voice just to put a female in a position. And I think, I get very tired of, any remarks in that direction because it's just not true. This is Liz is a person who's talented enough to her talents speak for themselves. And it's not like they had to go, well, we should get a woman, so we should consider her. I think it was pretty obvious what she brought to the table. So while it's wonderful and it's great and it's nice to have another female voice, and I think it also just adds to the, hey, let's just get used to having women talk about this stuff.
Yes.
We've seen that in the broadcasting, certainly calling games for ESPN. I mean, you look at the Trailblazers and people like Beth Mowens and, who've been out calling games, Doris Burke, people who have clearly have the talent for it, but have faced so much criticism from people who just weren't used to a female voice. And to their credit, they just, that hasn't stopped them in any way. And then what's happened is progressively as just the groundswell of support normalizes it. So it's no longer like, oh, the woman who's calling the game, it's the broadcaster. And I think that in fantasy sports, I was on a panel at the FSGA this year. We were talking about, just continuing to increase diversity in fantasy because it has not been great, to be honest. And I think it's all of that. It's normalizing the voice of women in the space, because there are a number of women who are very talented. I know you all know this. You're in the group, but I think it's like some of the other people who just assume women can't participate at the same level. That's probably more of them issue than anything else. But as it becomes more normalized, I think people get desensitized like to anything else. And then it just becomes normal that these people are there doing the same job. So
you're so right. And I'm actually really glad that you said that and brought up the fantasy community, because at the expo, Faith was on the panel. I moderated the first Women of Fantasy Football panel in the 4 or 5 years of the expo. Yeah, it was amazing. We had a full 30 minutes. I love you, Bob. Sorry. We had a full 30 minutes to talk about our craft with some of the biggest women in that fantasy niche, and the smallest breakout room, which was stuffed, standing room.
That's great, right? Because
it was amazing.
When that happens, and that next year you get the bigger.
Bob's already promised us the main stage in a full hour.
Great. I love it.
Yeah, it was like the most popular panel, and so many people were tweeting and talking to Bob and talking to us. I had so many questions, but we only got to get through like our introduction, and then I had 10 questions, and I only got to ask 5 of them, I think, to the panel. And it would have been great to have a Q&A, but I think it goes to show exactly what you said, is they're there to hear what we have to say, not because we're women, but because we know what we're talking about in each of our individual crafts. I love that.
And like Stephania said earlier, she loves her male colleagues, and sitting in that room last 2 weekends almost ago now, Women of Fantasy Football is fantastic. We are a movement. We are a group. We are a people. We are here. We are strong. We are not going anywhere. But it's a fact that without the male voices and that without the male support behind us, we just wouldn't be as strong and as much of a force to be reckoned with as we are. So to look into that room and see there's other panels happening, but these guys chose to come sit in a room and be squished and hot and listen to women talk for 30 minutes about fantasy football just spoke volumes to me, because we are getting the word out about Women of Fantasy Football, but sometimes those males who are supporting us, their voice reaches further simply because they're males. And so it's support like that helps others realize, okay, they do know what they're talking about. These women can hold their own. These women do know sports. And so I know WOFF tweeted it out this weekend, but I just want to say it. If you are a man who has ever supported Women of Fantasy Football, has ever supported a woman in fantasy football, has invited a woman to create content about fantasy football, thank you, because it is through your projection that our voice is louder.
It's 100% true. I wouldn't have had the opportunity at ESPN if it weren't for Matthew Berry. So
Matthew Berry.
He had the vision to say we're gonna be better if we have Stephania. And he wasn't saying because it was a factor like, hey, we don't have any women on staff, and he recognized, because he was so involved in the industry, he was so high up in the industry that he recognized that there weren't that many women involved in fantasy, and that was an area to reach for growth. So he openly acknowledged that, but he was actually just as excited about the fact that I had this different niche of injury analysis and what that could bring to fantasy. So that was kind of the main thing. But on top of it, hey, we get a female voice in the room. And he's the one who really pushed it and brought me out for an audition and all of that. And then when I got there and met people, the rest started to take care of itself. But anyone who watched the goodbye show we did with him knows how I feel about him, and the fact that he made a point of always, and even in our broadcast, because 14 years later, he still needs to speak to some of the people who might not be inclined to, listen to a female voice. And I think just him constantly reiterating that is part of like what you said, sometimes their voice reaches louder. People who like love Matthew might be more inclined to be like, well, if he says it, maybe I'll listen. And then they might, they can judge for themselves.
Right.
But I always want to acknowledge the men who open doors, because most of the time for me, it was men who opened the door. And then I have, there's some wonderful pioneers at ESPN and people like Linda Cohn and Hannah Storm, who I've become very friendly with, but, and they get it. Like they were breaking down massive barriers and had to deal with a lot more than I have. And they, so by including me or embracing me in my role when I got there, they then were champions for other women too. But that, like, I had to get there first, and that was all men. So I'm very mindful of acknowledging that.
That's
great point. Yeah.
super cool.
So totally cool. I think that happens across even all industries. Being marketing's my background. I can't speak to faith in elections or editing, but in marketing, especially e-commerce, it is a super male centric space, and being a woman in an executive role can be difficult. But in the years that have gone by, it's the same as I've found in sports, where they're like, man, you're really good at what you do. It has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. It's your work starts to speak for yourself. And I actually had a little PTSD from this and had a discussion just a couple weeks ago with the men at TrophySmack, where it's like, I subconsciously will call out like the things that I had done, because it's like, did anybody see it? I'm afraid nobody saw it. But they've never made me feel that way, but it's almost ingrained after being so long in a male dominated world where you're just like invisible. And then it's come to a point now where we're not invisible anymore, thank goodness. And I'm just so grateful and working so hard to just, sit at the table because I have a seat. And that I love that you're out there spreading that message, Stephania.
Thank you. I do, I sort of feel like it's just carrying the torch forward. But I can tell you that even just at ESPN, the growth in female talent, and not just on air. I mean, people who are behind the camera too. Just in every department, and the dimension and the depth of talent of women at the company has grown tremendously since I've been there. It's a very different looking place.
I love that. I love seeing female camera operators and the boom operators and things like that, because it's
one of our best like Steadicam operators has been a woman, and she's awesome, and everybody knows like she and those things are heavy, and they have to move her around the studio, and she is so good.
Josh is off camera shaking his head
but it's like that it's just, I've learned about so many of these opportunities for women. Some of our best studio directors are women. I mean, it's just, they're everywhere. They're everywhere, and they're doing all the jobs. So they're doing production and directing, camera operations, pretty much every facet of what happens there. Are writers, reporters. I mean, you can just see that the breadth is there. So it's really cool to see how much that's grown in the time, like this will be my 15th season, which is hard to say out loud because it just makes me feel old. but a lot of evolution at the company, I'm happy to say, in the time I've been there.
It's amazing.
Love that. Stephania, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule, because you are here, there, and everywhere. Camp is still happening. People are getting injured. Also, could they stop getting injured before the season starts?
That would be nice.
That would be just delightful if you guys could get on that. But again, thank you for taking the time to be with us. I enjoyed it as I usually do. I know Kelly enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, and while it is seemingly obvious, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can watch you, where they can hear the sultry sounds of your sports knowledge.
Well, the most obvious ones are the fantasy shows that we have, Fantasy Focus podcast, which I've been doing since it originally started now. Longest running original podcast at ESPN's Fantasy Focus. I'm doing 3 days a week now we've added some more voices. So it affords me an opportunity to work on some other things on the days I'm not there, but I'll be there on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. And I believe it's from 11 to 12 if you want to watch the video aspect of it. We do it live on Facebook, Twitter, ESPN's YouTube page, ESPN Fantasy app. But then the audio podcast is available like wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, you name it. And then our Fantasy Football Now show will be from 10 to 1, as it always is, on ESPN2 on Sundays. And that's where we do all the pregame, last-minute injury reporting. We have reporters stationed all around the country. It's great. We get such good information on that show. Everybody should be watching it pregame. And we're actually doing a preview show this year, which we've not done before. So we're going to have a show on Labor Day Sunday. So you just kind of get everybody ready last minute drafts happening. So those are the regular places. I will have other things going throughout the season, but sometimes I don't even know when those are going to happen at the last minute. So those are the most regular spots right now.
That's exciting. And as it says below, you can follow her on Twitter at Stephania_ESPN. She is constantly retweeting updates of injuries, of players, of what happened to who and why. That's honestly, she's where I get all of my injury information from. I mean, there's really nobody better to get it from. So
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Kelly, do you have any final parting words for our fabulous guest?
I'm just so honored to be able to sit here as this year's co-host with Faith and have the chance to sit here and speak with you, because I was like texting some of my league mates, like, I'm talking to Stephania Bell right now. Super nerd.
I appreciate it. I hope it didn't disappoint.
Never.
It's very nice to have you here. This year, Faith had to handle it on her own last year. I felt bad for her. She was,
I did a pretty good job.
You did. You did a great job. But no, it's very nice to be with you, ladies. You're doing a wonderful thing too. I mean, this is great. We all are supportive of women in fantasy football and scholarship money. For GALvanize, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, you spoke so highly of Laura last year. We decided that who better to partner with than Laura Oakman and GALvanize. So
good. Well,
on the same show that you were on last year,
she's done incredible work to really support women coming into the industry, and I think what she does is such a unique opportunity she gives these young journalists who are coming in, and so it's terrific. Couldn't think of a better partner.
We agree wholeheartedly. Stephania, thank you again for joining us. Go get some rest. I don't know what your schedule looks like the rest of the week, but take the rest of the night off on us. You deserve it.
Let's see. Tomorrow I will be Fantasy Focus podcast. I'm actually doing the noon Sports Center tomorrow. So
wow.
I don't know exactly what yet, but I'm sure it'll have injury talk in it. So
I'm sure. There's plenty of those floating around. So,
all right. Well, thank you for having me. It's always a treat.
Thank you for being here, Stephania.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye. I just want to let Josh sit and stew for a second. He can add himself, but that's far less fun.
Could we talk about Bojangles some more?
Yes. Okay. I could always talk about Bojangles. There's a picture that I don't know if I posted it to Twitter, but I took a boomerang of my Bo-Berry biscuit at the Charlotte airport last Monday on my way home. It was magical. So a Bo-Berry biscuit is like a biscuit, like a sweeter biscuit, but there's like fresh blueberries in it. And then it's got like cinnamon roll icing on top. It's magical.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. But we also, speaking of amazing things that are totally cool, we have some we have some jerseys to give away. So this is the point of the show where we let the guy come in and say words. Hi, Josh. You're muted.
Yeah, that's what I was getting off. Hi.
Hi.
No, honestly, I'm just like here in the background. Like, if there's any interview you ever want to fully tune in for, it's listening to Stephania Bell speak. And we've had her now twice in the last month on a show here with Club Fantasy, and I'm like over the freaking moon. So, Stephania, I don't know if you're listening. Thank you so much. I'm incredibly indebted to you, and I appreciate everything. And especially because you're always one of the guests every year that buys raffle tickets for these jerseys. So you're contributing to the cause. And I know I can speak for everybody here when I say we greatly appreciate that. So I guess without further ado, we have a couple of awesome signed jerseys to give away. So I'm going to pull up one of these and see who we're giving away first. I think it's this one.
It's always a mystery. This is also my favorite part of every week is Josh doesn't know which tab is which. So when he opens it, he's like, I don't know which jersey this is going to be for.
Weird. So I don't know. It's whatever.
Well, what's weird is the Women of Fantasy Football banner cuts off like most of it. And then you just have this weird little like chunk on this side of
it's all good.
Browser.
So the first thing I want to say is thank you for everyone that donated this week.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to raise another $645 towards our scholarship fund that we've set up with Laura Oakman's GALvanize. So our 3-week total, $1,935.
Yay!
Woo!
So the big push next week is we got to get over 2,500 because that was the goal, and I feel like we can do that. So
our final week,
first jersey we're going to give away. It's going to be the signed Deion Sanders jersey.
I was going to say, I see some names in here that I know.
Yeah, there's
Flynn. Joel Worth.
And our own Joe Zolo.
I was going to say Jay-Z up in here.
Tickets, so.
Wendy Early won a jersey last week. No, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Yep.
Because she won with
Jono. This week's winner.
Shut up.
I'll be damned.
Joe.
I'll be damned. Mr. Joe's. I feel like he should give it back to us and be like, all right, just spin it again. But that's not Joe. Let's be honest.
No, it's not. Kelly and I had the pleasure of hanging out with Joe for like 3 days this past summer in Vegas. And honestly, it was a delight.
Joe's a delight.
Joe is a delight because the Joe that you see on camera is the same Joe that you get in person. And he does it all without caffeine. And I don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get that either at all. I really don't.
Was actually nervous to hang out with Joe in a personal environment because I don't like him at all on the show. And then in person, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the cutest.
He's adorable. Kelly wasn't feeling well, so she went to bed early. So Joe and I went to I don't know, Kelly, what's it called?
Fremont Street.
Yeah, that. I wanted to say Old Town, but I was like, that's not right.
I love that.
So yeah, Joe and I went to Fremont Street. Neither of us have been to Vegas before, so here we are on Fremont Street, alone, and somebody's playing music, and so I have a video of Joe teaching this probably 7-year-old girl how to Cupid shuffle in the middle of it. And it's just who Joe is. It's like watching him on a Bismarck's video of an in-game performance and him just hyping the crowd. It's the perfect thing for Joe. Long story short, we love Joe.
All right. So this is the one that everybody wants.
Clearly.
The one where the most tickets have been purchased.
Somebody wants it more than others.
40 of them by one person. I should call this out. A signed Ja'Marr Chase Bengals jersey. Right there on the number 1. Let's see who it's going to be.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
That's about right.
I feel like we kind of had to expect that. He had almost half
for
the tickets
sure.
in the pool.
For sure.
Congratulations, Dennis. I'm hardly
Again.
shocked that you won, and thank you so much for the. Let's see, one. This is now the fifth jersey you've won from these. Yes, 5 jerseys you've now won. I'm incredibly grateful for all of the money you have donated, but I'm also a little sad that nobody else seems to get a chance to win these things.
Well, I mean, if they want. What is it that you told Zach when he bought 1 ticket last week?
You know what? You can't win if you don't play.
There you
buy
go.
one
Exactly.
Ticket. Everybody buy one ticket for next week. And if you feel saucy, buy more than 1 ticket.
Ooh, listen, let's be fair.
And speaking of saucy, and next week, we have a few other.
I was going to say, the phrase, especially feeling saucy, that would have been the opportunity to have an Ahmad Gardner jersey. I don't know how well it would have been, but to like play into the sauce jersey.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Fair enough. I'll remember that for next year.
Okay.
Right.
Josh.
Well,
who do we have next week?
Next week. So, Kelly, I know you're going to like this one. We have a signed Larry Fitzgerald Cardinals jersey. Now, mind you,
legendary.
This is one of the few from Pristine Auction that actually has logos.
Wow.
So this is like official, not just a jersey and a signature you're getting. That's official.
Legendary.
Giving away a signed Larry Fitzgerald Cardinals jersey, and returning once again because he just couldn't get enough love last year.
Hold on. Daddy?
The consensus QB1 in fantasy this year. A signed Josh Allen Bills jersey. Daddy needs a home.
Someone alert Victoria and Linda.
Yeah. Cooter.
That's that. You can head over to womenoffantasyfootball.com, click on the graphic. It'll take you over to the raffle page. We've already sold at least 1 ticket for next week. Let's make it a whole bunch more. Let's get up to the $2,500 goal that we set. So we need at least another $565. I feel like we can do it with these 2 amazing jerseys. Let's go. Ladies, take it away.
Josh, thank you for your brief presence. It was brief. For Kelly, yes, I did it. At Kelly in Phoenix, for myself at FF_Leap of Faith. If you are not following Women of Fantasy Football at Women_FF, you should be doing so. Our guests next week are equally as amazing. Like, they're so awesome. I know you are not going to want to miss them. I know that I am totally blanking on them right now. But
they are amazing.
They are fantastic. It's been a long couple of days.
Totally cool.
You know what? They are totally cool.
And I just have to say, is the best part was there's this really long pause, and you're just like, "That's totally cool."
Like I said, it's been a long couple of days.
I love it.
So next week we have starting our show, we have Ashley Marie on Twitter, who recently went through Galvanize with the Los Angeles Chargers, which is exciting. So like, I love that we're partnering with Galvanize, and we'll get to talk to somebody who's been through it. First of all, a friend of ours, and then a Galvanizer. And then closing us out for Women of Fantasy Football is Jen Eakins, the Monday Mommy. She is big in fantasy. She's a fantastic woman, and she's a UGA grad. So, like, we may be spending some time talking about the University of Georgia and their recent graduating class, but I'm okay with it. If you're not, I'm sorry, but still stick around because we have lots of awesome things to talk about. So once again, for myself, for Kelly and Phoenix, this has been week 3 of Women of Fantasy Football. Last show is next week. It's a bittersweet memory because the final show of Women of Fantasy Football means one thing, and that means that football season is here. Have a great week, and we will see you next week.